Right, some updates for you. The Trump-Putin meeting has been cancelled, publicly anyway. Now, what you will hear in the near future is about Russian collusion again. But what I will tell you is it's not related to any elections, and everything to do with the two countries working together to defeat the common enemy. Next thing, watch out for more firings. They are in the works, including those just voted in. Next one, watch out for more resignations, including those just voted in. Now, the migrant caravan, we've had more details, and as we have new members, this next piece will be uncomfortable. It's only short, but if you have any doubts as to why Trump sent troops, which, as I stated in last night's show, that is an unprecedented move, which is why the Pentagon refused, because the military are not allowed to interact on American soil. As bizarre as that sounds, that was all set up by the previous system, the old system. And so it's a big move. And the reason being is partly because of our team, not all of it. The information has been fed to Mr. Trump over a period of time, which has been borne out of what really goes on at the Mexican border. So what happens, has happened previously, migrant caravans, once they arrive through the border and they are pushed through the border, courtesy of certain families, Texas Rangers, aka Bush, and also with the support of Mr. Obama, those migrant caravans arrive, and then they are separated into different groups for different intentions. Now, with regards to the children, they are then pushed into various programs which are as follows. Number 1, child labour. Number 2, child sex slaves. Number 3, terrorist training cells. Number 4, body parts. Yes, you heard it correct. Number 5, adrenochrome. Number 6, blood drinkers' use. And number 7, food. So all you people who are complaining about so-called migrants, that is what happens to the children. That is why that border is now being protected, because the government is now fully aware of what really takes place at that border. Child labour, child sex slaves, terrorist training cells, one of which was found in New Mexico. Some of them get chopped up for body parts, some of them get used for adrenochrome, and some of them get used where they siphon all the blood off for these psychopathic vampires. And the final one, some of them get used for food, both for human use and others, non-human use. Now, the adults are, the children are the cover for the adults, and most of them, if not all of them, are mercenaries who have been paid to come in into America and cause havoc, either by assassination programs of certain individuals that they don't like Kim and the team being the prime example. We've had numbers here attacking us, MS-13, you name it. Muslim Brotherhood that come in from with Oman passports, but are actually Saudi nationals. Muslim Brotherhood, where they come in via Venezuela and then trek to the border and come through. Or they get pushed into other programs like school shootings, church shootings, and other deliberately engineered incidents, whether people died or not, all of which gets relayed on the mainstream media, which they are aware of. Those portal people are the total scum of society and need to be stopped now. Mr. Trump or anyone in this country cannot move forward with these portal people known as the mainstream media in tow. And it's time they raid the buildings and turf out those treasonous turds now. Not after this or that, like now. You know, Trump's not looking after these children, the immigrants. What about all the children and the immigrants under Mr. Obama? Where was the questions from the media then? Was it not the Democrats who set up that system of separating children from the parents, half of which, if not more than half, are not their parents? Those children are going into the programs as I've just described. So that's the update for now. Let's get into some questions. First thing I want to clarify was I got an email regarding Shane, the Runa. And it said, what you said was a bit confusing. He seems to reveal much and then disappear, then re-emerge again after an extended absence. Are you saying he's gone for good, forced back into a programme? Your interviews with Shane are epic. Yes, they were. And it played a big role in finding out the inner works of the system, the control system. It helped both Kim and I. Now, with regards to Shane, he is a Rothschild, not his fault. He has been part of the programs, which he has admitted, and he came out to help, except he got dealt with by another one that this particular person asked about in the email, Mr. Swerdlow. Him and his people set upon Shane violently, physical violence. Avoid Mr. Swerdlow at all costs, as he was one of the reasons Shane went into the background. Now, when you've got children and family who get threatened, which is what happens, it's easy to then pull back. Now, part of the problem we have with the alternative media is A, the number of clans in it, and B, the ones who are doing the right thing are always the ones that come under the most severest examination. Why is that? Because it's engineered to be that way. This show has Q&A for a reason, because it allows for accountability. You ask a question, and if I can answer it, I will answer it. How many other shows allow that? Will Mr. Wilcock or Corey Good answer questions? No. Will Jordan say that answer questions? No. and all the other clowns. Shane answered people's questions, accountability. But then there was people in the community that decided that Shane was a problem, and also within the system where people decided Shane was becoming a problem. Like Shane's blog. Shane's blog was not designed for the alternative community. Shane's blog was designed to help people get out of the programs. Unfortunately, Corey Good and the Blue Chicken Cult outed it, backed and supported by Parks and Bill Ryan and the goons at Project Avalon, which is exactly the same name as the Langley program. Project Avalon and Project Camelot are both names of CIA programs. Oops. So Shane tried, but it's far easier to step out and step away and go back into the background. Whether he's gone back into a program, that's not what I said. He went back into the background because too many were giving him abuse. By now, people should have learned their own discernment a lot more. So you know which ones are real and which ones are not. It's all too obvious now. Not like it was 4 years ago. It's all too obvious who are the real ones and who are not. And that's why I started tonight's show with the song Suspicious Minds. There's not enough support for the real ones, and Shane was one of the real ones, like Kim is, and Kim's getting abused left, right and centre. I am to a degree, and yet they're one of the few who exhibit accountability. You know, why is Kim not on other shows? Why does nobody ask? Why am I not on other shows? Why does nobody ask? You've all, I'm speaking to the choir, but many of you have gone out onto the YouTubes and to the Sarah Westalls and all the other people. Get Kim and Thomas on the show. And nothing comes back. So I hope that clears the Shane up, but avoid Swerdlow at all costs. In fact, avoid all super soldier people at all costs. In the DC comic universe, there's a character named Ra's al Ghul. Is it based on a real entity? I don't know, sorry. I haven't watched any of those, or many of the DC comic things. What can you say about the Order of the Knights of Malta, apart from what can be found on the internet? Perhaps Kim would have been better to answer that. What I understand is it's the military arm of the Jesuits, and the reason they are called that is that they were granted the whole island of Malta as their base. They own, the Knights of Malta currently own the country of Malta. So the soul traps and loops have been taken down. Let me just check. Yeah. Does this mean those being born now will have the option to remember past lives? Yes, they will have an opportunity. It doesn't mean to say they will. A lot of that comes at age 30, not always, when you connect the cord to the mental plane. Not always. But some have past life memories at a very young age, but the programming kicks in and they forget, or they discount it as just being not relevant, or just something that their own imagination. And of course, we did that piece on how adults shut kids down when the kids talk about their imaginary friend. They can see them. It's only later where the spectrum reduces where you can't see. They have more of the sensors switched on, 0 to 6. After that, it starts to diminish, and then the programming kicks in. No, you can't have imaginary friends, and you can't see this, and you can't remember that. And it all gets discounted. Basically because the adults can't handle that information. Could you tell me where I can find more information about different dimensions? Well, we covered it a bit last night. We covered it in many shows about the different planes of existence and the different frequencies. A dimension, in essence, is a change of frequency. You know, people, there's been a lot of BS on the internet that we're going from the third dimension to the fifth. No, we're not. More rubbish. You know, you can go third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and up to 100 dimensions in dream time, which people, again, think isn't real, but it is. You know, people tend to think that what they experience is only in the day. Nope. Like the piece I read out last night, you're forgetting you are a multi-dimensional being. Not all species contain that ability. 4D is below your feet. There's 5D below your feet as well. Unless you have the right frequency, you will not experience it or see it. Do you know if there's any sort of protection against voter fraud for the midterm elections? There was some. You can't protect all of it, all of the time. I suspect we're going to hear in the coming days and weeks about a plethora of voter fraud. Until the clowns are properly removed, all elections have the ability to be messed with. It just is what it is, you know. Until there comes a time, it's the same. It's the banking, you know. Comes and the team's working through changing all the old back doors and this and that in the banking, and until there's a brand new system where it locks out all the interference, and the same applies to the elections and the votes, and the same applies to your computers and your phones with all the security clearances on it. You go and look at the security clearances on your phone. Japan government, people in Spain you've never even heard of, all hacking into your phone via those security codes. Check them out yourself. You'll be German companies, Dutch companies, British companies, you name it. They're all there. So eventually, over time, the quantum system will kick in other modes, where perhaps you can register your vote without pushing a button or using a pen. You'll register your vote through your own thoughts. Maybe a long way off, but may not be. Depends how things change. Following a recent post in a Facebook group about seeing shadowy figures in the corner of your eye, I've been seeing cat-like figures, oh dear, around me like passing shadows. I was wondering if you knew of any possible significance of that. Yeah, Run away. Bloody cats. Oh, I'm going to get the cat police after me now. That's a different one. You see shadow beings, not necessarily cat-like. That suggests there is cat-like beings, and despite what people tell you on the internet, those didn't serve humanity too well. The so-called Egyptians, they're nothing to do with Egypt or being Egyptian or pharaohs or anything, and everything to do with a different type of being from a different star system, and they weren't favourable to humanity. You go and check the hieroglyphs, the cat beings are on there, known as Phelinoids. The crocodile people were on there, the dog people were on there, they're all there. And no, they're not people dressed up with masks. As regards shadowy figures, they're all around. And yes, occasionally you might see them at the corner of your eye, but shadow beings are not always beneficial to have around. And I would suggest you use the shielding document that we have on Think Different, more so now than ever. There's a lot going on trying to mess with people's heads and frequencies through various programs, be it the TV, the computer, you name it, or the phone even, or the Wi-Fi. There's a range, it's not one specific issue, it's a collection of. So go and shield up, as shadow beings are not good to have around. I'm noticing that rents across the board are $300 to $400 more a month than what a typical mortgage payment would be. Are banking systems ready to be implemented when the changes occur in regards to purchasing housing, or will there have to be new guidelines established and bugs worked out? It's almost impossible to get in between the investors and the sellers without access to money. The rents have been going up because it's a deliberate assassination of the American people, like it is of financial assassination of America, the country. I've been warning about this for 4 years, particularly California. And eventually Californians are going to have a choice, or they're going to have to be forced into a choice. How long is it going to go on of the incidents that have kept going on and on in California? Another one today. I warned about California 4 years ago, and people didn't listen, that they were forcing people out so they can have their money-oriented enclaves. But there's fires, shootings, gangs, water drought issues, drug issues, higher rents and homes. The whole state has been decimated right in front of your eyes. And at what point are the people of California going to stand up en masse and do something? Are you going to wait until the rogue military come in and just march you all out, like they tried to do to the Haitians? Well, that's only Haiti, it won't happen here. Yeah, well, they said that Nazism wouldn't come back, except it never ended, did it? You can't carry on sitting around thinking life's okay and it won't happen here, because it does. Look what happens with the engineered Michael storm. And I repeat, storm, not hurricane. Storm. 1.3 million people displaced. Already the money people are marching in, thinking they're not going to allow those people back in their beachside homes, and are going to build hotels and casinos. Same thing happened in Mexico, right along Puerto Vallarta and Acapulco, etc. Same thing happened in Hawaii, where you can't get access to the beach unless you pay for some expensive hotel. You have to start seeing the patterns far sooner than we have. Look what happened with Katrina. Anyone who was going back to their home to pick up their belongings or whatever else they left there was being shot as they crossed the bridge by the same rogue elements. Katrina is now 12 years ago. How many of those people have gone back? Less than 5%. They were never going back. Well, people always think it happens to somebody else. We are America. This is not going to happen here. Well, it already has. It already has. And the people of California have a big choice to make. You either fight for your state and turf out the flakes and fakes of that state who vote in Pelosi and Feinsteins and Jerry Brown shirts, or you're all going to get forced out. It's that simple. Same's happening in Manhattan. So the money people have it all to themselves. They don't want to be mixing with poor people like us. No. So they just put the rent up so that only they can afford it. And it's happening all over the place. And yet people can't see the patterns. If a pattern happens once and happens again, you've got a bond. So then the pattern always repeats. So it's not Prophet Thomas by talking about 4 years ago that California was being tipped out, and I mentioned about Florida, and I mentioned about Texas and Louisiana and Haiti and Puerto Rico, because the pattern was already there. It always repeats until the people start seeing the patterns of it. So yes, rents are going up deliberately, because they know most people, because of what they've done, have poor credit history, which is deliberate, and so then you can't afford to buy a home, so then they buy homes up on pennies on the dollar and rent it out to you at exorbitant amounts, which then puts you in more debt and you end up moving, and on it goes. The people have to stand up. Will the entities in the lower astral world ever be able to free themselves and go into the higher dimension, or are they doomed forever to stay there? Good question. I don't really know the answer to that. I suspect not. I think maybe there will be a divine intervention at one point. But that's the way the old system worked. Essentially, we were batteries for them. But maybe in the future something can be done. I don't know. I always believe there's a way out for every being, like we do now, as we the people free ourselves from the cabal and totally freed from them in the future. Yep, but we're also freeing ourselves from ourselves. That is what is missed by a lot of people. Perhaps I should read out what I read last night, because maybe some missed it because it was early on in the show. Most people are like jigsaw in a box now, and we all know the jigsaw can never be completed when there are missing pieces in that box. The cabal or the system only scattered the pieces of the jigsaw, but it is we who created the box and the missing pieces. And it's time to locate all your missing pieces and put all the pieces back together and ultimately discard that box. That, people, is true freedom. All else is the mask of illusion. And so we can be free of the cabal tonight, but it's not going to make a blind bit of difference unless we step up and change the way we act. Well, it's only happening in California, so it doesn't really matter. I live in Iowa. Well, actually it does, because patterns repeat, and eventually it'll come to you. No, it doesn't matter that Iraqis died. Actually it does. It matters when everyone dies. And that's where we have to rebuild ourselves, where Americans are not any more important than any other country. We're all the same. So if a whole village in Iraq is bombed into oblivion, that's no different than bombing a whole village in Pennsylvania. If you feel it the same way, then we are combining our PSI fields. And once we start combining multiple PSI fields, it's game over. It's completely game over. Doesn't matter what they do. It's all about us. Always was. Monsanto. People complained enough about GMOs. What's happened to Monsanto? They collapsed it. People did that. All these people getting fired or resigning. Who did that? It wasn't the government, was it? It was the people. People standing up, like the two stories I put last night. One protecting an asylum family from being thrown out. Another helping a bookstore move 500 yards down the road by forming a chain where they all linked together. That's the key. You mentioned that teachers would be a viable necessity going forward. My son is a teacher and has been for 3 years. He is all about teaching kids how to think and not what to think, and is aware of what has happened for the most part. How can he get involved in helping? Well, once the funding gets released, then we're going to require volumes of teachers. Volumes of them. Because the whole, what is known as the education program, has to be rewritten, torn up and rewrote in the real way that's going to help and advance children, not dumb down and send them backwards. You said in your last Q&A that the spirit is released after the flesh is decayed away. But if you are cremated, it's released immediately. Do you recommend cremation then? Well, it's your choice. I'm not here to recommend how you decide whether to be cremated or not. I've given you the knowledge and the background on it, and it's up to the individual themselves to make that decision. It's your choice. Is Iran a faction on its own or something else because its economy is shot and the clergy have moved all assets out of the country? Iran is being interfered with. Of course, you all heard before, the so-called baddie Ayatollah Khomeini was a trustee of the trust. Oh my. So he's part of the system. Same as Gaddafi. Same as Mandela. A trustee of the trust. Part of the system. Iran is being messed with because of its ancient history. It's also got oil, which they are trying, or have tried multiple times now, to generate as much oil as possible whereby they think they can run a currency, a world currency based on oil. And so you've got Obama making cash deals to rogue Iranian people. It's like the other guy, Ahmadinejad, or whatever his name is, cabal agent. Makes it sound like he's threatening Israel and all that stuff. It's all BS. But Iran is a key country in history. The land of the Aryans, remember? And they want to take over the whole of that region. You know, I warned 5 years ago about a caliphate. You look at the region. Slowly but surely it's gone from Palestine into Lebanon, into Syria, into Turkey, into Iraq, into Iran, into Yemen. Is Oman next? Will Saudi Arabia become the next one to be decimated? So then they can extend the wall from Israel, or what is now known as Israel, right through to southern Turkey and separate it off for the ancient origin region, which was not housed by man. It's all the Anunnaki, Draco, and all those Marduk and all those goons. That was their region. Would these assets stolen be returned to the respective country of origin? Yes, absolutely. Despite them attempting to melt down gold and all kinds of other things, it still retains the RNA, and it will still eventually be returned to the country of origin. All of it. All assets are under the guidance of the trust. All assets. Whether Anna von Reitz or the other goons want to argue that, they can't. And eventually all assets for each country will be returned. Whether it's gold in Indonesia or under some other bunker, most of which have been emptied out already. It's in safekeeping, and it will be returned to the country when the threats and the goons have gone. And they will go. I've always associated the interdimensional attacks and mind effery with the existence of the Matrix, being struggling with the news that the Matrix has now been undone. Am I mistaken what is commonly referred to as the hyperdimensional matrix with the lower astral beings, beasts and creatures? Yes. The matrix, the veil, the simulation, there's all kinds of different names, and the AI, which the last one was psychotic, all went down between 2013 and 2015. The final piece of the Matrix as such, the AI, went down in late November of 15. So, you know, people, as regards to the astral, that's a plane of existence that still exists. It's not necessarily part of the Matrix, it's part of life. There's two different things. Now, the Matrix, the veil, the simulation, whatever you want to call it, was encompassing many aspects of planetary life, including the 7 planes on Earth. So, things have changed. Almost all myths and creation stories talk about serpents or winged serpents, which some call dragons, because some of them were, that's why. The Hydra dragons, Hydra Draco, far more nasty than the normal Draco, from my own knowledge and experience. Now, the serpents, you go and look in the Vatican, and their worship of the serpents, winged or otherwise, that's their God. It's not ours. Serpents are not good. More reptiles. Are you all confident that the stupid laws, etc., that are being put in place will be easily reversed for humanity at large? Yes, they will. What is, Kim mentioned earlier, the administration is currently going over the American sovereignty. That changes everything, including legal laws. Changes everything, because the organic constitution will be restored. So then proper laws come back in, not legal. A lot of those rules and statutes and regulations are all to do with corporate law, or for people who live in Washington DC, except it got branched out to include all people. I came up with a suggestion, it was 3 or 4 years ago. Because you are under the rule and being classed as a citizen of the District of Columbia, which then all laws and rules apply, you are classed as a government employee. All of us are. Imagine a class action lawsuit. Not against the government, because the government don't make rules and laws, but against the system, the Federal Reserve. We want our back pay, like since 1934, because we've all been classed as corporate entities, and the laws are based on us being corporate entities, which only resides in the District of Columbia. Except you live in Florida, you live in Pennsylvania, you live in Iowa. They don't apply to everybody else, but they made you government employees. Where's our back pay? Does Donald Trump know that there is no God? I have no idea. No idea. If we get to come back after death, do you remember past lives? Again, that depends. Depends on your level of soul evolution, on what you achieved in the previous life, where you were up to when you left. Because when you come back, you'll be at that level until you go through the 7 planes of development on the earth plane, and then you have the ability to go then into the cosmic 7 levels, which means you will not reside on a 3D planet. I'm wondering how it is we will realise the changes we help make from this lifetime should we choose to come back. And is it not possible to learn how to extend our lives before this one? Well, there is life extensions, but unfortunately it involves using children, and so we'll skip that one. It would be nice to be here the 2 or 3 generations it will take to create the world we want to create. Yeah, I get that. I won't be here at the end. But that doesn't detract from me pushing forward to create. Essentially what we're doing here is creating the platform for people to operate on for the rest of our future. We've not built the people's platform for 78,000 years. In fact, in essence, for 110,000 years since the Rus were here, the Urs. They did try again about 5,000 years ago. It didn't work out too well because the people, funny enough, didn't support it. And this is a common theme. The ones who will help you to save you from yourself are the ones that are always denigrated. For those of you who believe in Jesus, which is not his real name, it's Radomir. The people didn't all follow him, but then he didn't want them to follow him either. He wanted them to follow the words that were spoken. Not follow the man, follow the words. And yet so many turn against people. The likes of Jesus, if that's what you want to call him, Radomir, Anna in the 1500s, and a number of other people, teachers that have come in here to help, all got turned on or killed by the very people they were trying to save. Did anyone protect JFK? No. I've told people that JFK was part of the factions as we know it now. It was a family war between the Kennedys and the Bushes. But he said a lot of things that would help the people. You know, secret societies, etc., etc. Did people rally round and protect JFK? No. And then wonder why life carries on the way it does. Whilst people, you know, on the internet are sitting there waiting for fake RVs when the solution is already laid out before you. But that solution gets ridiculed and Kim gets hammered. And we wonder why things just roll on. You know, we in this year, this calendar year, we made a world announcement of American sovereignty. How many in the alternative community supported it? Now the questions were, who gave Kim or the trust the authority over us to decide America to become sovereign? You know, what type of question is that? It's ego-based. We have to change the way we think and the way we act, and support the real people who are trying to help. Or you can carry on believing in the Rothschilds and the RV and all those goons and cryptocurrencies and blockchains and Nasara and Jessara. It just goes on and on and on and on. None of them delivered. Manor World Holding Trust has already delivered. Like she mentioned, money was sent this week to prop up one government department. Otherwise, those staff were not getting paid. But, you know, whilst people are turning on Kim and supporting Rothschilds, this world's always going to struggle. After much research, I'm convinced presently that global warming is a total hoax and the evil ones are trying to set up the world for a global famine, global false flags, as so many crops will fail with the coming mini ice age, which is due to come on strong 2019. We won't be getting mini ice age either. There is sufficient people with abilities that can change nature So what could have been an issue, should it crop up, it can be changed by people thinking in a different way. But the Russians did warn we were heading for an ice age. Temperatures go up, temperatures go down. If they didn't stop meddling with it and let it settle, things would just carry on as normal. But we do have the technology and the abilities of certain people to prevent catastrophic incidents like the total meltdown of global warming, where the temperatures are going up and everyone's being cooked, or a coming ice age. We can interfere. So where are we next? How many have we got more? Have we got? Oh dear me. Loads more. I'll have to whiz through some of these. You mentioned that if one person kills another, it drops down a karmic level. Can you explain this more? Well, I did so last night. So I hope that helped. Is the matrix is programmed to collapse? Is this the reason for all the glitches? It already has, and explains the glitches. Yes. When people believe it doesn't exist, then that glitch will become real. Who was Zorro from Hollow Earth? Any info if this is a real entity from Hollow Earth? I've no idea, sorry. Can the quantum system detect voting faults, cheating like financial ones through DNA matches? In the future, it may be tasked with that. For those who are terminally ill and choose euthanasia when their pain becomes unbearable, there's no longer any quality of life, especially those who cannot afford care or have no one to care for them. Will they have to go through another reincarnation as a human? No. But they will drop down a level. Suicide, as covered last night, can be fairly brutal in some aspects, and again, it would appear unfair in some cases, but it can't. It's very clear. I know there's a lot of people who have committed suicide because of what's gone on. We have members in the group who have lost people in that way. It's very sad, and it's not easily recoverable for those who are left behind, but people have done this over many, many years. The key is to create a situation where everyone has someone to care for them. The world as it is now, everyone or the majority look after themselves only, whether that's the cabal or the ordinary people. It's everyone for themselves. That has to change. And nobody cares enough, or not enough people care enough, if someone gets sick, or whether the old couple or the old person on their own has got enough to eat, or whether their homes are warm enough. Well, they're not my family, so why should I bother? Well, they are your family, and when you consider that as such, then people wouldn't feel so isolated, where their only escape route was to kill themselves. They will always have someone to care for them. Look at THI. We've prevented 7 people who were threatening to commit suicide. Why? Because we were there for them. And it didn't take place. The answers lies with us. When you said we could have been eradicated in 2012, does that mean we would have existed after we died and lived eternally? No, they were going to eliminate all living beings and all the resources of the planet and then smash it. That's what I meant. They may have told the so-called special people, the ones with titles and badges, that they were going to survive with the Georgia Guidestones of 500 million people, and a lot of people thought they had the special ticket and all the useless eaters would go. No, they were going to go as well. It wasn't a 90% elimination, it was a 100% elimination plan that should have been completed by them by 2012. They failed. If the soul trap death loop is now gone, does it mean when we die we go back to source? Yes, it does. You will go back to source. You will pass your own judgment. Nobody else is here to judge you. No one's sitting on a cloud or behind some pearly gates deciding whether you're good, bad or indifferent. You do it. And there'll be aspects of your life that you will have excelled in, and there'll be aspects of your life that you didn't do too well, and would perhaps like to correct that in the next lifetime, whether that is as a human or is as a plant or a tree or a dog. That's the way it works. Not everyone comes back as human. So Marduk is gone, yes. Archons are still feeding, yes. When they no longer fed by us, they will feed on themselves and destroy themselves. Not exactly true. They are non-form, remember. A lot of them anyway. Next question, does that make the parents the ones that need to be dealt with? And if so, who's going to deal with them and turn the Cabal bloodlines, and in turn the Cabal bloodlines that do the dirty work? Well, the parents were all dealt with a few years ago. The only 2 that were left, the 2 twins, one of which is known as the Red Queen, went completely insane. And it's my understanding now that there are no parents left on this planet, and the only 2 remaining are VI representations of themselves, but they're not here. They can't handle the new frequencies. Same applied to some of the giants that have been waking up around the world. They can't handle the new frequencies and have left. What happens to the souls of children that are being used for food? I'm unsure. I can take a stab at it. I would suggest it is completely consumed, but I could be wrong on that. If the UPU and Galactic Council have a hit squad, why aren't all the parents on the list along with all the worst Cabal members? UPU and Galactic Council, you're completely misunderstanding of their role. They're not here to take out Cabal members. They're here to observe and enforce the peace treaty only. at times they will interfere with certain aspects that we don't have the technology or the know-how of how to deal with it. Or at times, like the issue with Marduk, when we went to the council and asked for a request, can we, not they, remove Marduk, given he's committed this crimes, that is going against the peace treaty repeatedly, and they granted that request and Marduk was removed by the team. But the UPU and the Glasgow Council are not here to take out parents, Cabal, Kissinger, Bushes, you name it. We the people do that. And we the people are doing that. How can I recognise if I'm receiving information telepathically or if I am unconscious channeling? Difficult question, and only you will know that. Nobody else. A lot of the channeling, because of the mapping of the AI and AI copies, whereby people were using channeling methods, which was a lot of it implemented by some of the goons in Langley, and also the Greys were using it from the AI system, where if someone wanted to connect to a spirit and they thought it was, for argument's sake, the father or the long lost sister or whatever, they had the ability to map that being that you were attached to, and then suddenly you were channeling via them, not the one you had contacted. We don't have sufficient knowledge to support dabbling in that sort of information. But you will reckon somewhere along the line, if you're connecting with person X, if that's not person X that you thought it was, there will be hints that that's not the real one and it's channeling. But only you can answer that question. Do you have any insight to offer on why information continues to be held from the people, i.e. 9/11, JFK, FISA documents, 61,000 sealed indictments? There's so much going on, and there's only so many people who can do it, and there's only so much time in the day. And what you got to remember is the very people you're trying to out also control the main aspects of the system, like the DOJ, which is now being changed as we speak. You know, a lot of these documents are held within Langley or the FBI. Well, there's elements in Langley and the FBI that control the flow of information, and so they block it or deny it. There's a load of people in the government who won't vote for it because it's going to expose their paymasters. And who do you trust? This is the problem, is who do you trust? Do you trust Trump? Well, some do, some don't. Do we know whether he's working for a faction or not? Not necessarily. You can take my word for it. But nobody knows who's on what side anymore. Now, over time, it becomes clearer who's not working for the benefit of the people. But there's not enough man hours to investigate so much that is now being revealed. Take Pedogate. When you've got perhaps 2/3 of Congress who have taken part in meddling with kids sexually, are they going to work on exposing it? No, they're not. Are the media people who have been involved in it, or the Hollywood people who have been involved in it, or are they going to pay people to shut people up and not investigate it? This is the difficulty of what's going on currently. There's a lot of people are in fear, and fear leads to poor decisions, and fear then leads to being offered bribes to shut up. It's a massive undertaking, and it takes time. And yes, would I like to see certain things done or people fired? Yeah, absolutely. But we've already had 9/11 information. We know it was an inside job. What use is an extra piece of paper going to change that? We already know JFK was assassinated by Bush Sr. et al. So another piece of paper is not going to change anything on that. The FISA document release. We already know who's rogue and who's not. So that's not going to alter anything either. Documents and piece of paper don't alter anything, particularly when we already know. What will change is actions, where people who are in positions of authority do the jobs they're paid to do. The police, the judges, the courts, the military arrest the people who need to be arrested. They don't need papers to know who's done what, when, where and why. They've had more papers, than the Xerox factory. Bundles of them. Just arrest them. But the problem is nobody knows. Insufficient of a platform has been built where nobody knows who's watching their back, both for good purposes or to stab it. This is the depth of the system. But we are making big strides. Are some of us here to learn through the human experience for our own spiritual growth? All of us are. Not some, all. Some soul spirits in here should never have come down this far. I don't see how you can go into cosmic and universal level of soul evolution and redo 3D level again. But that was part of the trap. Have we been memory wiped other than the lifelong need to be of service to the planet and others through our actions? Yes, we were repeatedly memory wiped. There's some people who have been here for the last 78,000 years. Just memory wiped, repeat, and back in. Memory wipe, repeat, and back in. Feed, 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 and feed. That has to stop. There's been no growth, real growth on this planet for 78,000 years. Humanity was ready for transition. And that doesn't mean we're going somewhere else. The frequency change is the transition. We were ready after the first loop of 13,000 years, and we got thrown into another and another and another and another. This time we're not. We're not. I am a witch. No, not me. This is a question. I make altars to set intention. I lay on the ground barefoot and connect my body to the earth. I wildcraft herbs, and I also work with divination, more as a practice of self-inquiry, but there is alchemy to it. You are saying being a witch is bad, but I can't be other than what I am. Should I leave the group? I would never tell anyone to leave the group for being a label. People can choose whichever label they choose to call themselves. But I question not being a witch. I questioned those being involved in witchcraft. Two different things. You want to label yourself as being a witch, fine. If you want to partake in witchcraft and magic, which is an evolutionary cheat of not self-developing the person themselves, where you can have your own natural evolutionary magic. That's a big difference. Witchcraft is dabbling in the spirit world, which too few people really understand the consequences of. And far too many on this planet have suffered through it. And if my theory is correct, it's only a theory at this point, but it does bear out more than people being half human, half robot. And witchcraft explains what we call the synths, then it's a bigger problem than people realised. White and black magic are no different. And it's that aspect I personally don't agree with. You are dabbling in the spirit world and you have no idea, or most people don't have any idea, who you're bringing in. Why do you think witches, which is largely done in a circle, which is a portal, which is bringing others in? But what happens if you can't see the others that come in and they become attached to those people in the circle who think they're doing white or light magic? People have no idea how precious this vessel and this time and this energetic frequency currently is. And there is billions of entities just waiting to jump into one of these vessels. And we have people playing magic, calling them in. And the majority of people don't believe you can be possessed. And the majority of people cannot deal with that possession. Then we have a big problem. Because society then dictates, oh, these people who've got voices in their heads are nuts and they should be under the Mental Health Act. Actually, no, they are possessed because somebody else has called in a spirit. And the majority of them don't play nice. That's the danger. So it's not the label, it's the actions that are the problem. I don't know who poisoned the earth with the water with salt. I will perhaps look into that deeper and see if we can get more answers on that. If we were not originally supposed to be here per opposition plan in 2012 but made it through anyway, would that have meant it would have been gone forever or gone elsewhere? Gone forever. They were going to obliterate the whole planet. Thomas, are you psychic? You said that if a person does not given right environment and teaching by age 6 or 7 and gain the extra 2 DNA strands. No, it's not DNA strands at all. By 6 or 7 you need the 2. You've already got the physical one. You need the etheric cord. If you haven't attained the etheric chord by that age, you are always going to remain on that level. Essentially, in the real terms, not the politically correct, that person will remain retarded, which means they'll go backwards. It doesn't mean they're mental and stupid in that terms of retardation. It means they're never going to go forward, and if you don't go forward, you go backwards. I had gifts as a child, but the controllers took them from me. I'm not too sure that's the case. It may have been some actions you took where you were not responsible enough with those gifts. I've said this before. People think automatically they reach the mental planes and it's all over and we can play games and do this and do that. But if you don't act responsible, mental planes and gifts and abilities comes with the highest levels of personal responsibility. In other words, you can't go attacking people. You can defend yourself, but you can't attack. And so the mental planes abilities are and the people who retain the mental plane abilities are the ones that act with ultimate responsibility. Many people lose those abilities because they are irresponsible, including a former person on a previous show that I had, because he chose to play God, and he, Drake, lost his abilities. I remember a woman who was a so-called friend of the family draining energy from me as a young child by holding her hands over my head. She made me feel weak and ill. Was there a solution? Technically, yes. Well, not technically, it is, yeah. Is Reiki and the like good and safe practice? It depends on who's doing it, and it depends on the energy of the person doing it, and it depends on the knowledge of the person doing it. Because if they're not cleansing their hands and themselves from the previous energy transference, then you're being passed on and infected from the negative energy from the previous client. It all depends on how aware people are doing those practices. You can have hands-on healing. You know, I've seen some people on the internet, you know, they go from these bloody fake, not the fake ones on the TV, these evangelists and all that bullshit. A real healer will lay hands over the region that needs to be cleaned, but you have to remove the negative energy that is pulled out through the hands, then has to be discarded before the next patient. Otherwise, you've just transferred that energy into somebody else, who then transfers it onto somebody else. So it's all about the practices and the knowledge base of the people doing it. A real healer will flick the hands, and that's getting rid of the negative energy that they've pulled out through the hands. Same the people who do massage therapy. Laying hands on somebody else is pulling out their energy. If that energy is not good, then you are going to be infected by that negative energy. Would Shane or the council be willing to give an update? I don't think Shane is willing to participate back in the alternative community. If we find out different, maybe. Council, probably not. It might, again, maybe in the future, I don't know. Are the rest of the multiverse's inhabitants aware of the forms of abuse that have transpired here on Midgard? Yeah, because a lot of them have suffered the same. Some of them a lot worse than we have. Way worse. All of these dark forces, plots and machinations being recorded for posterity? Yes, it already is. Would a historical reference library of all the dark machinations that have been inflicted here help support the transformation of naivety into vigilance? It is recorded. It's on holographic plates for those who have the right frequency to access. Nothing is lost. People talk about the Library of Alexandria being burnt. It's not lost. A lot of the books were moved out prior anyway. But it's all recorded. But you have to have a certain frequency to be able to access it. Now, I'm not so sure, based on the question, you're really understanding that it's a two-way street. Yes, you can blame the dark force for inflicting certain things here, but it's ultimately down to we the people to reject it, not leave it to a select few to help and try and fix it, and trying to drum into people's heads that they have to go and do something themselves. I've covered many things in CHI, and one of the things that we cover more than most is our own role in it, because it's just as important of what we've allowed. Just a few basic things. People in their 50s and 60s will remember have 1 or 2 vaccinations. So why are suddenly children having 36? And why haven't we questioned it? That's just one. Why didn't Americans en masse question the Patriot Act? Why didn't all the westernized countries complain about being charged $1, £1, €1, or $2 or $3 to access their own money in the banks? Why didn't the people ask why the banks are issuing credit cards to us at 17, 13 to 26% when they're only giving us 0.5% or 1% interest on our savings? Not their savings, ours. Why didn't America stand up with what was essentially a coup when in 2000 when Bush Jr. took over, when he'd lost the vote? Only the few complained, and this is part of the problem. Yes, you can end the cabal, but we have played a massive role. We have created our own jigsaw and broken all the pieces. They smashed the pieces about, but it's up to us to put all the pieces back together and get rid of the box. Because the cabal didn't create the box, we did. If we just cared more for each other, all the world's ills vanish. No, you're not going to torture the Iraqi people. No, you're not going to do the world's largest Holocaust in history, and no, it's nothing to do with the Jews. Try the Russians and the Aryans. Well, it doesn't matter, they're all communists, really. Doesn't matter about the Chinese, they're communists. No, the Chinese are not communists. The Chinese are part of a program that was introduced, like it was in Russia, of communism. The Russian people and Chinese are not communists. They've been enrolled into a program. And history erased and rewritten. So it's not just the dark force machinations. Like I said, the people who believe in Jesus. What did the people do to protect Jesus from the Romans and the Khazarians? Not enough. It's not enough. That has to change. Naivety transforming into vigilance and overpowering ridicule is the type of thinking and acting differently I would like to see transpire. Well, that starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with everyone else that listens to this show. And if everyone thinks and acts different and doesn't repeat the failed experimentation of the past, then things change. It already is in many aspects. You never talk about Canada and the globus puppet ripping our country apart. Well, actually we do. We've mentioned Canada many times. In fact, I've highlighted more than anyone else about the fun and games that has gone on largely unhindered in Vancouver, and the mind control and the monarch agents that are rolling out of Vancouver, and the along with Kevin Annett, the desecration of all the native peoples up there, and the mind control programs run by Dr. Green and Mengele and the other SS people. So to be fair, our show has covered a lot about Canada, but maybe we need more support out of Canada or inside Canada to highlight the issues that are going on. Now demanding 15 years financial history. I don't know where that part is going. Every deposit expense now announcing 350,000 more immigrants to come. Yes, because they're deliberately trying to assassinate financially that country. The same as they're doing to America, the same as they're doing to Britain, the same as they're doing to Holland and Germany. They're trying to eliminate financially the whole of the Western world to transfer to the East. Except that won't happen. I presume you mean Trudeau is connected to the elite and their agenda. Yes, he's another puppet, a lower level one, because despite what people think, government, prime ministers and presidents are not that important. We think they are, but they're not. He also has a pedophile logo on his foundation. Yeah, I've heard he's got connections to that. Does anyone know he was one of the unsealed indictments? I have no idea. There must be those from the council aware of this destructive, unhinged twatwaddle. The council are not involved in the politic of the world. That is our role, to highlight it and remove those people. And a lot are going. A lot have already gone. Fired, resigned, you name it, they're going. And you're going to see a lot more shortly. Can you give us hope? Well, the fact that you know all this stuff is hope. Because 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I guarantee you knew very little or none of it. So that in itself is a change. It may be not the ultimate light switch event that people keep talking about on the internet. but change happens slowly. It always did. You know, the Cabal system didn't just light switch on and happen overnight. It happened over thousands of years, hundreds of thousand years, and yet people are expecting it to bring it down in 2 weeks. We're making extraordinary progress on many, many aspects. When will the public announcement regarding Mnuchin being fired take place? Anytime soon, I imagine. It was said to be held back until after the elections, which have now gone, but there's that much going on. Either way, he's had his security clearance and his codes and his cards all deleted, so he has no influence anymore. I'll wait for time. What's the scoop on Beto O'Rourke? I've no idea. Sorry. Maybe one more. I'm getting tired now. Can you speak about Radomir? It's not Rathomir, it's R-A-D O-M-I-R. Maybe one day I'll get time to collate that show and do a whole show on it. But I've been saying that for near 12 months now, so. But like someone mentioned previously, you know, how they impressed they were with the series From Russia with Love. That took me over 30 hours to collate, and then 7 or 8 hours to do the shows. So it takes a lot of time, but maybe I'll make a start on it. We'll see. Right, I'm sorry, there's probably about another 7 or 8 or 9 questions that I can't answer. Well, I can answer, but I'm too tired and I need to get some dinner. And I'll be back on 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, which is 11 a.m. Holly time, which is Central Time, which is 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and 9 a.m. for all you poor unfortunates who have to get up early on Sunday morning in Pacific Time. So 5 p.m. for the UK, and so a nice better time for those people anyway. Sunday could get real interesting. If we manage with Randy to get video on, it will be rather interesting. It will be interesting anyway, but that will be even more interesting if we can get video on. I'm sure a lot of people would like to see Kim. We've always been safety first, but certain things have unfolded where now people, it's thought it would be best if people saw the face behind the words and behind the blogs. So we'll see how that unfolds, and hopefully Randy can get that on. If not, it'll be a good audio show anyway, and maybe we'll do just Kim and I will do the other more visual revealing in another show. We'll see. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed listening to Kim again. I'm sure you did. And I'm going to play one of my favourite bands again. I know people didn't know too much about this particular song. It's not one of their most popular. But if we all move as one, we all move forward a lot quicker. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.